Hello, welcome to this episode of Noah News. Today we're going to talk about the decline of the democracy in India. Since August, farmers in India have been protesting to get new laws that deregulate the sale of crops. This would allow private buyers freer reign in a marketplace that for a long time has been dominated by government subsidies. Farmers say that the new reform laws that have long protected small landholders' place in the market will put them at risk of losing their businesses and land to big corporations. These demonstrations have been some of the largest in human history. In fact, on the 24th of November, over 250 million people across India participated in a strike. These demonstrations are only the latest in a trend consisting of the Indian government overreaching, encouraging violence, and stirring up anti-Muslim sentiment. For more on this, we will now go to Mogens Ellegaard, who just published a book called Indian Democracy on the Brink of Failure. Hello, Mogens Ellegaard. What is it that has led to this sudden decline of the Indian democracy?
Thank you, Noah. India is the world's biggest democracy with more than 500 million active voters. But the history of India's democracy is not long. India became independent less than 70 years ago after being a colony of Great Britain. Democracy was implemented, but unfortunately corruption and kleptocracy arose. But in 1977, parliamentary democracy was implemented again. In 2014, the biggest democratic election happened. It was between the Indian Party, BJP, and the NDNA. BJP won by margin and have now achieved an absolute majority with 282 seats out of 543 seats in the parliament. Due to the reason, and it's probably due to the reason of Islamophobia in India, despite there being 200 million Muslims in India, they are still severely discriminated against. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi has cut the budget of public services with more than 10%, and the democracy in India is slowly declining as corruption are rising.
Thank you for that, Mogens Ellegaard. Now to our historian Rasmus Dam, who's currently researching modern-day history in India.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Mr. Dam, why is it that Islamophobia is so widespread in India right now?
Islamophobia is rooted in India's history, stemming from a lingering resentment towards Islamic domination of India during the Middle Ages, and the policies established by the country's British colonizers during the British colonization of India. This was further evoked by the violent partition of India into Muslim Pakistan and primarily Hindu India, but with a large number of minority Muslims. The countless attacks and incidents of anti-Muslim violence are so politically motivated, so systemic, and often backed by the state, or at least accepted by the state, that a large number of scholars has described it as a form of genocide, or at least a form of state terrorism. A large part of the blame is assigned to the governing party of India, the BJP, headed by Prime Minister Modi.
Thanks for the analysis, Rasmus Dam. And now let's move on to our two experts, Jonathan Feutzer and Asger Røggen, who are currently researching Indian democracy at New Delhi University. And they want to talk about Mr. Modi, their prime minister, and the BHP party, which he is the leader of.
Well, thank you very much. BJP stands for Bharatiya Janata Party, which translates to Indian People's Party. It is one of the major political parties in India, and as of the election in 2019, it is the party with the most representees in the national parliament. BJP is a right-wing party with values that historically reflect Hindu nationalists. They have a liberal economic standpoint and strive for economic growth in India. Some of their policies on this matter is criticized for mostly helping the top. They also advocate the ideology of Hindutva, which insists that India is fundamentally a Hindu Rashtra, which means a Hindu nation. This was shown in the 2019 election, where the BJP ran a divisive campaign with its leaders accused of indulging in anti-Muslim rhetoric to polarize voters.
Now let's move on to the next thing, which is about Mr. Modi, who is the Prime Minister of India.
Modi was the chief minister of the Indian state of Gujarat from 2001 to 2014. He is affiliated with the RSS and the Conservative Indian People's Party, which are extremely right-winged. Their goal is to maintain Hindu nationalism. In 2014, Modi was elected as the 14th Prime Minister by a landslide. The 70-year-old Prime Minister is known for his magnetism and moving speeches with quotes such as "hard work never fatigues, it brings satisfaction." That also links to Modi's own life because unlike many of India's former prime ministers that come from a wealthy background, Modi was born into poverty. He helped his father sell tea at a young age, before pursuing a political career and earning a master's degree in political science. In 2002, Modi was criticized for displacing thousands of villagers in the state of Gujarat, and that led to a religious riot between Muslims and Hindus. The riots left more than 1,000 people dead, and that were mostly Muslims. Modi was accused of postponing government action to the riots, and later on the charges against Modi were dropped due to the lack of evidence.
Thanks for that, boys. And now we're going to turn to our last interview of the day, which is with Magnus Søberg. He's going to tell us how the situation is on the ground, and therefore I want to ask you, Magnus Søberg, how is the situation on the ground?
I am now here in Mumbai, and ever since the last demonstration, the whole situation here in Mumbai has been very tense. The last demonstrations were very violent, and on one side we have the Muslims, and they absolutely hate the Prime Minister Modi, and on the other side we have the Hindus, and they love him. We also have the farmers that demonstrates against the government. So all in all, we can compare the situations to the current situation in USA with the wild Trump supporters that and all in all a very divided and polarized community. So yeah, it's the same here. A very divided and polarized community, and they all have different opinions to Prime Minister Modi and the government in general.
Thank you for that, Magnus Søberg, and thank you to all of you beautiful people out there watching. I'll see you next week. Don't go changing.